I'm Alan Childress.
Wait. Okay, and we are recording. Welcome to the evening of Python coding. It's a meetup where we typically explore a tool, Python-related tool or library. Uh, with AI coming, then AI tools are also fair game to show at our library at our meeting. And Alan Childress, who's from a good friend from Austin, is going to show what he's doing with Rock and how to use it when you do things. So, Alan, it's all yours.
All right. Thanks, Jacob. I've used Grok build over the last 2 months to build Python. And so I'm going to show you the application as well as looking at how to build it. You could do this with any AI, any large language model. The markdown files are universal across them. So what I present, you can use with Claude, you can use with Codex, etc. This is a particular implementation. Grok build came out on June 27th, and I was lucky enough to be around to pick it up. So that's when I started. And so anyway, I have an interest in stock market trading. And so this is a stock market analysis piece of code that we'll look at. And in the process, then I also realized that I could automate my own project management. And so I'll talk through how that can be done. And we'll talk about the particular installation lines if you want to install Grok build yourself, and the Visual Studio extension for Grok build that exists. And then in terms of implementing it, what are some suggested things, how you start with a goal. And I've created as a side project this large language model project template. So all the good generic things I put in there, so you can just copy and clone it yourself if you want to start from there. And again, it's not Grok specific. Then I'll talk about some best practices I figured out and the cost benefit of using it. So just at a high level, this is my program, and I'm going to swap over to the real thing and for just a minute. And so this is an API to Schwab that I can bring in, and then I can look at my particular trades, my open and close trades. Oh, I don't have any particular trades in Apple, so let's swap to Tesla. There we go. So these are my Tesla trades, and I can instead look at the options. And I can zoom in on a particular trade, and I can also then double click on it to go investigate it, and that swaps over to the other tab, to the history tab, where I have the particular trades. And some of those are options, and so they have a buy and sell, and so I can double click and it'll swap to the opposing trade. And then I can come back to the particular trade involved. So that's the essence of it. I can do some other things in terms of looking at the particular positions that I have. I can do an interesting graph on options, looking at options in different ways. And then I've got some rule analytics that I'm building. So these are all the kind of things that are nice that, you come up with an idea and just ask for it and it'll create it for you.
So Alan, before we proceed, we're not giving any financial advice to everyone, but just explain what the part that Grok did and what part is something else. So we'll understand why you're showing us Grok.
Yeah, Grok has done 100% of this. I have reviewed the code, but I haven't actually modified any of the Python myself.
So this entire interface, graphical interface, is something that was built by Grok, and you're showing us what you can do with the interface that Grok made for you. But you probably have some sort of API.
Right. So back in 2019, I gave a talk, and back then I'd spent about 6 months, and I'd used the Plotly library to do similar kind of graphs. And in this case, I got that stuff going in about 2 days. And along the way, the Plotly graph showed its limitations. It's designed to sort of do one static image, and I would flash another one, and it was too jerky. So I've changed libraries over to something called PyQt graph, PyQt graph, and so I've shifted over to that now in most of my graphs. This is an example of actually tracking the particular runs and how much the code is developed over time. And so you can see that it's gone from 0 lines on up to 80,000 lines of code. I watched the performance of how the automated tests have performed. I also track my to-do stack and how much I've completed, and then I can click on individual runs. So that was a side thing that I found beneficial for the project management. In that, also then I'm able to look at the code in terms of its features. So the various things that you see on the screen, the watch list, the chart, the options, etc. I can expand it. I can go down to the actual code. I can double click on it, and it'll actually launch Visual Studio Code in that. And I can show that after the meeting. So to shift gears into Grok build itself, there are 2 layers. And so when you go to install Grok build, the command line interface, it's from SpaceX. And you can go through the terminal user interface. You don't have to use Visual Studio. You could do it character-based. And it'll generate code just fine, sort of blind. It works with files, and it works with Git, and it works with the PowerShell. And then you authorize it with your Grok login, and it records all of its sessions on your hard drive. So you can actually analyze it, and you can actually have it introspect as well. It can look over its prior considerations to decide various things. A layer on top of that then, community, Powin, or Powell wrote a wrapper around the Grok build interface, and so that's what I use. I'll show that. And I'm pleased I was able to put in a request to give a thumbs up, thumbs down, and within a day or so, he said, that's a good idea. So we'll have that hopefully soon. Within the wrapper, you can give a thumbs up and thumbs down as you can, and it'll pass it on to Grok build to reinforce Grok build itself. But anyway, hopefully that makes sense. If there are any questions, let me know. But that's the different layer between what XAI produces and the wrapper, then that makes it easy connection within Visual Studio.
We'd better see it visually if you can show it.
Okay. So over here on the left is the Grok build communication. And so these are my conversations, and these are my prior conversations. And so I can go back and look at individual work, and I can actually go pick up a session where I left off. So the session that is an expert on pandas technical analysis, I would go back into this conversation. It's already loaded everything into its mind, into its memory, right? So rather than have another one learn all that over again, this one's already got that memorized. So that's how I've worked it.
Yeah. Wait, Alan, you're showing us. Let me ask some guiding questions, maybe to be. What we're seeing now is what?
Well, this is Visual Studio Code.
Okay, VS Code. And
yep.
What's special about VS Code, and how did you put in Grok, and how did you do it?
Well, I'm going to get to that.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. Go on.
Yep. I just got to get back to the slide deck. Okay. So I just want to make that clear of the difference between the 2 layers. And so when you're ready, then what you do is you bring down your PowerShell and you issue this command. And there is a website that specifies all this out, but you download the install of the command line interface from SpaceX, from XAI. And here's the Mac command for anybody who wants to do it on the Mac version. Once it's in, then you validate it by issuing the Grok version just to make sure that everything's good. And then you can do a Grok update if you want to get the latest code. And so you do need to then do a login. You'll need a Grok account. There's a simple one that is from XAI that's $8 a month, and that doesn't qualify. You do need the baseline account of the Super Grok, which is $30 a month. I've got the Super Grok Heavy, and we'll talk about that later. Anyway, it uses OAuth to log in with credentials. It'll look something like this when you connect up.
OAuth meaning you can log in with a Google account?
Uh, and that, but this also is an OAuth into your Grok account. And so you know OAuth authorization into any of your given
Okay, and
applications that you can work with.
So let's go back. You have to go to Grok and pay them first, or you
Yes.
just have to log in? Okay.
Yes, you would need a Grok account. This is Grok specific. Now, you could skip this part and you could use Claude Code instead of what I'm showing you right now. You can put Claude Code and you can put Copilot. They all integrate within Visual Studio Code, and they would work basically the same. Now, once you have the command line interface, which looks like this, and you'd run in your terminal, instead, there's a programmer who's done a nice thing, and so he's created the Grok Build Community Edition, and so you would then further go to your extensions, download that, and then you will have this better interface available that is what I'm going to be showing you. And so you have conversations either way, but this one is much better. It's got you authorize at what level. I was very cautious to begin with. I was authorizing each individual thing, but then as my trust built up over time, I eventually ended up where I gave it full authorization to do whatever needed to do. And so as you open up your repository for the first time, you know, you'd start with a goal. And one of the things is to set up Git on the machine if you don't have it, and make the first commit for that project folder. And that's the way that I did it. I created my stock data project folder, and then I had Grok fill out the basics of connecting up to Git to do that. Git is a change management system for anybody that hasn't had it. It's online. It's very good. And so from there, you begin to have conversations as to what you want to have, and it will begin to lay down the code and test it. So over time, I started with just the basic README markdown, but soon into it, I created an agents markdown file, and that helps me define to the agents the procedures that I want them to follow, the coding standards that I want them to follow, the best practices, my particular processes of how I work with Git and how I code. And so to help y'all out, if you're interested, I have this project template up on GitHub, and you can download from that URL, and it'll lay down these basics for you so that you don't have to go through that. You could just go in. These are in English. The markdown files are in English, but they're in a special format. And so you can just insert your own aspects. So I was going to just touch on a few key basics here. Agents.md is one of the most important here. The README is the most important. The README points to everything else. The project markdown has the basic structure of the code. And then process markdown is how it should be done. Coding standards are my particular standards, and I want code that's readable as possible. You know, I'm not a fan of removing vowels out of variables and, you know, only a technical programmer can read it. I work with subject matter experts on a regular basis, and I want them to be able to understand the code as well when I present it to them. One of the real values that I created was the change log. And so it tracks at each check-in, at each change, everything is documented by date. And then I can retroactively go back into the change log, and I can create status reports from it. But Grok itself can go back and find out quickly what's been done instead of having to look at the raw code or having to look at its own sessions. The change log is at a high level. It can figure out, it's sort of like a table of contents into things, if that makes sense. For my own benefit, I created a glossary. And so you would introduce various catchphrases, etc., that I didn't recognize. And so I would have it update the glossary so that the developer, can keep track of what it is. And I figure if I had trouble understanding it, someone coming behind looking at the code might also have trouble. So that's part of the reason why the README points to the glossary. Similarly, you know, the libraries that I used in Python, each time In the coding standards, I had it put a one-liner in there to explain why it was bringing in that library, what its purpose was. And then there's an overall libraries.md that defines why did we bring in this library. I brought in Postgres as my database. And so there is Markdown to explain how to properly set up the schema and definitions, etc. And then the to-do Markdown file is where I keep track of things for the future. And I have a nice plugin called Kanban Markdown, or to-do Kanban. And it presents a nice Kanban that you can move things along through your process. So it helps on your project management. And finally, lessons learned. As you know, we all end up banging our heads against a particular thing, and the code goes in a weird way to handle a certain quirk in a certain library, etc., or an API that has to work a certain way. So I documented those in the lessons learned. And again, that helps the AI in the future when going back through, it checks the lessons learned and doesn't repeat the same broken wheel over and over. So I also, about midway through, realized, well, I had it write a script that would take screenshots so that it would give it eyes to the code, right? So as it's testing, it can take a screenshot and then do a binary comparison of it. And in doing that, then I realized I could put those screenshots in the changelog so I could watch how the application changed over time from very simple on up to much more complex. So that's where I keep my changelog screenshots in a particular folder. And then the scripts grew from just a few to about 150 different scripts, testing scripts, and they're organized in terms of unit tests, which test individual blocks of the code. They don't require the database. They just make sure that I didn't break anything as I make changes. And then smoke tests that are overall, you know, did we break anything major? And then finally an integration test, which actually fires up the whole code and tests things, right? So before I do a final push, I may make like 14 to 20 individual changes. Those are being individually tested, but then before I do the final push into the code, we do a full integration test to make sure that we didn't break something in the process. Any questions on that? Because this is sort of the heart of what I use AI for and how to control AI. Okay. And so again, each of these markdown files are agnostic. You could use this with Claude, you could use it with Codex, etc. There's nothing specific to Grok in these markdown files. One exception, in the agents, we'll talk about this just a second. Grok has a cool purple multi-select. And so I liked it enough. I put it in the agents. I said, use these a lot. And so when Grok is interacting with me, I have it pop up a question that's set. And so it does this on a regular basis because it doesn't have, XAI will not give it permission to read binaries without my permission. And images are binaries. So when it gets done and it's generated the screenshot for it to analyze to make sure it looks right, it has to pop this up and says, do I have permission to review the code, review the screenshot? And I say yes. And but there are other things of, hey, I'm going to lay this out in choice A, B, or C. And what I love is this recommended part. And so most of the time I do go with recommended, but sometimes I'll pick another one, and sometimes I just give it, I hit other and specify a different path, and then you hit submit. And so I'd highly recommend, I put that into the template that I've supplied, and I would highly recommend using that. It makes life much simpler.
Alan, you're running too fast. This one is your creation? This thing that pops up, or is it something that ships with Grok?
This ships with Grok build, and I think it's also purple in this way, like this, because the developer who put the wrapper on it for Visual Studio put the wrapper on this way. But so it's the combination of those two. But if you use Grok build with this Grok extension, you will have this available. I did not create this. The thing that I did is I went into the agent markdown and I said, I like this, please use it a lot. And so, for example, every time that I start a new conversation, the bot will pop up and it'll say, do you want to start a new branch in Git with it? And so it's very easy for me to start a new Git branch, change control branch, and it does it via one of these purple pop-ups. And if I don't, if I want to keep it on the same main line, I just say no, stick with the current.
Okay. So you can control the frequency of those things appearing.
Yes.
Okay. And this is what you did. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And so the other thing too, let me show you in Visual Studio. This one. Right here are different sessions, right? And so in the context, when you start a new session, then the mind is blank of that agent. It has to bring in everything new. But in each one of these, then it is a different communication and it loads that in. And so you can pick up where you left off. And the advantage is it is multi-threaded. So you can have multiple conversations running simultaneously. And so you'll see the colors here. If it's purple, then it is busy running. And if it's green, it's because it's finished and it's got something for you to see that you haven't looked at yet, right?
Okay.
And so I can pick up from a given conversation, and it has a different context when it does. So that's what I'm talking about when I say multi-session.
Before we run away for a second, go back. We see VS Code here, and you are now focused on the left. They usually show tools, or how they call it, extensions. So Grok Build is an extension, correct?
It is, and it's right here. This is the Grok Build extension right here.
So you basically install it like every other extension, and then you have the ability to actually run this.
Right. It is a wrapper around the Grok Build command line interface. And if I went to the terminal, let me start a new terminal. Get plus in a while. No, you know what? So this is the command line, which is not nearly as nice, right? And I can do version here. And anyway, so this is not nearly, you can get everything done in here, but instead by using the plugin, you get it all nice right here. So I started here to begin with, and then I found that interface. So it's showing you that you're 24,000 tokens out of 500,000 tokens in this particular session. If you get close to about 75% done, it will consolidate all those thoughts into a file, and then it'll start fresh. And you see the same thing over here. This one is at 205,000 tokens out of 500,000. At a point that it gets to about 400,000, it'll reset. So it'll take it a minute or so to do that. Anyway, so that's what this extension does for you. Okay. And so one of the things that I found, I was taught by my mentor when I was in my 20s that you need to log everything. And so I make it a standard procedure, but I've really seen the benefits here, that I created a database log. And so the application itself logs everything that it does. And it makes a huge difference for Grok when it's analyzing code for debugging purposes, etc. Back to the code. This is just a visual display of the database log. The Grok has access to the actual Postgres SQL database itself, right? But this is, all the detailed, so it can go through all of everything is tracked here within the log, and I would highly recommend that. And I put that in the template. It'll aim for doing that with your database by having a good log. Then instead of it having to figure it out the hard way, it knows exactly what happened step by step in your application when it ran. The other thing is then if something is running particularly slow, it tracks the milliseconds of how long everything took, and it can spot in the log what's taking a long time and then focus its attention in to fix the things that are running too slow.
So you're basically using the AI as a profiler.
Well, the AI would not be able to profile if I had not recorded the log. The application itself records a log into the database, and because it has access to that, then the AI is able to go do SQL commands, etc., to go find and look in the log to see what happened, and then yes, as a profiler.
This is interesting. So yes, this is very interesting. I didn't expect this, but you're actually using AI to profile your code by putting in a log. This is great.
Right, but if you didn't record it, then you wouldn't be able to do it, right? So,
well, you just learn. Just everyone here on the call has learned a new trick.
yeah, well, there were 5 key things that my mentor taught me. He's a multimillionaire. He's had $300 million software companies, and in fact, his protege headed up the Microsoft XML team and the Visual Studio Code itself. He learned underneath Peter. Anyway, so you log everything on both sides, and that's what it allows this, among many other benefits. So, in terms of testing, as I mentioned, you create individual unit tests, and then they grow into a smoke test. You grow into integration tests, and I put it in the procedures that you do not check in code until you have run all these to make sure that you didn't break anything in the process, right? So before I even get to see it to test it, the code has already tested it itself. And if you don't put these in, then that won't have happened, right? You'll be the guinea pig. Here's a fun thing that I did at the end. Well, and I've actually done this 3 times at 3 points in the development. I did it probably about 2 weeks in, and then I did it about a month in, and then I did it about 2 months in. I said, based on my prompts, what level am I operating at, and what improvements can I make? And I also made that same question. I said, based on the change control logs, what level am I operating at, and what improvements can I make? And that really is the most profound advice I've gotten. And so I've improved how I code based on that. And so I would highly recommend, so that's why I included it in this deck, so that you can also ask those questions. It's very, very beneficial. Okay, cost benefit analysis. SuperGrok is $30 a month. I would run through my tokens in about, by the way, it resets every week. So every week your token count resets. But I would run through my tokens in about 3 days when I was really hitting it hard, and I would have to buy extensions. And they gave a good deal, an introductory $99 a month for 3 months. And so I took that, and now it's a bare scratch on it, and I love SuperGrok Heavy. I may even step up to it when it gets done. They did the right thing by hooking me in. Anyway, you can go, I've given you the URL where you can track your billing to make sure it's not getting out of control. You can pay attention to your, in fact, maybe I've got that somewhere.
Yeah, you're showing something all the times. Can you talk about it, or are you going to talk about it later?
Showing something about what?
The time, like 1 hour, 1 week, or whatever.
Yeah, I'll talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
But this is the billing. And so I just want to show you that I'm 20% through my tokens for the week, and it'll reset on August 20th in 2 days. So there's no way that I'm going to get through this. I was burning through it at the regular SuperGrok, but the SuperGrok Heavy is just a huge amount of tokens. And this is for everything. Your regular Grok questions, your Grok Imagine, everything is all underneath here. But you can configure how you want to do it. And so I set it up so that when it reaches $2, then it adds another $10 with the maximum amount of, and I had like $70 before. But now with SuperGrok, it's not an issue. But anyway, that's the way you could ease in on payment of stuff. And again, you don't have to use Grok. You can use Claude Code or whatever else you want to do. I just wanted to show you what I've done. So this is my estimate of my time savings. Basically an hour spent in Grok build was about what I could code in about a day and a half, 2 days. A day, 8 hours spent with Grok is about a month of my coding. A week is about 6 months, and a month is about 2 years. I'd say that the work that I've done in this code would have taken me about 4 years to code. At the level of detail you know, it's just wonderful how, and I'm mentioning it down here in the benefits, that everything is audited. The administration of the documentation is just phenomenal. Everything is tracked in exact, you know, I just don't have time to do, I do a better job than any programmer I know, but I can't keep up at the level of detail. And that change log is the key thing. But, you know, what's wonderful is I didn't have to bang my head against the wall worrying about APIs. I didn't have to worry about how to configure Grok. How to configure GitHub, how to set up the database. You know, I did install the database. That's as far as I had to do. The entire schema was built by Grok, and it also worked out Git conflict resolution where one branch was stepping on the other one, etc. And then also high performance downloads. I went to a research site and I downloaded 1.5 million Tesla records, 1-minute records, and it did it in about 5 minutes. It made an attempt to connect up, it ran into a problem, it debugged the problem, made a second attempt, brought it down, put it in the database, gave me an update. That would have taken me 2 or 3 weeks at least to get that done. And anyway, so I have found this really beneficial for me. All right, so that's the basics of my talk. Any questions across that?
Guys, it's your time to ask questions. If you don't ask, I'll ask. Okay, well, it seems that I'm asking. So you said that it took you in the past, like what you presented in the past, there's a video there on the YouTube somewhere about what you showed. It took you about 6 months. How much time did this thing take you to do what you're showing now?
Yeah, I've done this in 2 months. This is 2 months worth of work. I got a majority of it done in about 1.5 months. It's getting more polished right now. With the ability to like zoom in like this, you know, Plotly couldn't do it. We swapped over to PYQT, and notice how it's putting this financial history up above, right? And it's in sync. And you know, just any idea that I had, I could implement. And so I'm looking forward to extending these analytics right here. These are particular rules that I can bring in. And so did I bring it in? It's not in here. There's one called Hearst. And so there's a Pandas technical analysis, Pandas TA, and I can double click and it's going to bring it over here. Here it comes. And so then it's brought this in, and this is now live, and I can go adjust, and instead of being 100, I could make it 200. Thought I could. Well, something's wrong with that one right now. But I can go in and modify the Bollinger, and I can, let's see if I can change it. Nope. I have been able to change these. I'll have to go check it. But anyway, the goal is to put in additional rules that will end up here as additional algorithms that I can add these algorithms in. So I can add, the options.
So let me ask it this way. You don't need to use any other platform anymore, correct? Like I use Yahoo Finance or something like this to show those graphs. You have created your own interface with your own graphs that fits what you want.
Well, I use thinkorswim, and my thinkorswim is way more advanced than this. So I'm not at the point where I can quit using thinkorswim. If you're interested, I can fire it up.
No. I'm just so, but you have something that you are. Is this something here that you cannot do in the other application?
Yes. So, yeah, being able to see all of my trades is something it cannot do, right? And I've had to draw it by hand. I would take the thinkorswim code and draw these by hand. But then the additional benefit of being able to hover over it, notice that down here in this section right here is the details and the profit that I made on that individual trade. And I can double click And when I do, it jumps to the history, it cross-references, right? So here's the particular trade that I made on November 8th, 2024, right? And I can say, hey, what's causing this spike right here? I want to know what the trades were going on right here. So it jumps, right? So all this cross-referencing is code that Thinkorswim will not do, that my code will. Also showing all these details of how much was stock trade and how much was cash. Schwab will not do that either, right? So there's just all sorts of extra features that I've got in here that at some point I hope to not have to use Thinkorswim for a majority of the time. And I hope to make it easier on myself. I'm just not quite there, but this is already quite beneficial to me. I do use this for about half my time. And then when I need to go execute trades, I swap over to Thinkorswim.
Interesting. So you can actually do trades from your whatever you created.
I have not gotten to that point yet. That'll be a next step. But what I've got right now is something that I can trust in terms of the analytics and presentation. And now I'm ready to start doing trades through it. I can.
But you believe that you will get there.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will make it safer on myself because there are ways that I can mess up in Thinkorswim, and I can sort of create guardrails in here to make sure that I do it in my particular way.
So anyone who does something, for example, you do stock trading, but someone else needs a tool that they have an equivalent tool, they can use Grok to actually create a new version of that tool that fits what they need.
Right.
Personally, only their own personal thing, and this is only with Grok, and it doesn't cost you a lot. You said like several $30 a month. Over a year, it's less than $400. So in $400, you buy your own software the way you wanted it.
I mean, you know, if you hired a helper, there's no way that you could get it done in that fast. So, to the point of our early conversation, why we're all in trouble on that, right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to continue this conversation soon. But first of all, I want to open the floor for questions again, guys. If you have any questions, now time to ask. And if not, we're going to stop the video and then we're going to go offline and ask questions without the video. So perhaps people are shy and don't want the questions on video. I'll just check the double. Yeah. Anyone? Questions going once? Questions going twice? Questions going 3 times. No more questions. So I do ask you all, make some emojis, do some noise, show that you love the presentation tonight.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
I had a good time putting this together. And by the way, you know, just as a reminder, the template I created is agnostic. It's not Grok specific. And I hope that it can help everybody. So go there to the large language model project template, and it'll lay down all this code for you, or all these markdown files. And then you can choose what language you want to write it in.
Okay, so unless someone wants to jump in the question, then we're going to close this recording. Don't go away. We're sticking around. We're just not recording it yet anymore.